Opinions are divided after we've seen what the devs have in store for us for the Fantastic Four update next week. For those of you that missed it, we're getting 2 new characters, Valeria and Franklin. We're getting 2 new uniforms for Reed and Sue. And then we're getting a new pseudo content called Multiverse Saga with a new collection, new things, new resources to farm, etc., etc. But really, it's the Multiverse Saga that has kicked off people's opinions and divided, in my opinion, divided the community between sort of haves and have-nots and sort of the hopeful and the cynical. So I wanted to try to bridge that divide between players. I wanted to also offer up my opinion as well as the opinions of other players that I've talked to and seen already online, and really just discuss what it is, that the game is doing, in my opinion at least, and how we can best navigate this. So again, this kind of stuff is difficult to discuss fully in detail until we see the patch notes, which is why I tend to be more optimistic than cynical. And I talked a bit about this on the live stream last night. It's basically, there's really no value right now to being cynical, aside from offering constructive criticism. So you can say, if this is going to happen, then the player base is going to be upset, and the devs should try to mitigate that by doing A, B, C. But all of that is just speculation, right? Because we have no idea how this content is going to be executed. But at first, I wanted to cover the idea of it being content at all, because I see some people, I should say, throwing around the idea that this is not content, and that's their opinion for sure. They can feel that way, but I disagree, but I don't disagree fully. It's a little bit complicated, but basically, okay, this new Emblem collection is a lot like the Shield Archive in the sense that you collect these different emblems, and we don't know how you collect them yet. So that's a huge question mark, right? So you collect these emblems, and then when you have the emblem provides you a small buff, and then the emblem applies to a larger emblem collection, sort of like how a Shield Archive applies to a larger collection. And then once you've completed that collection, you can get an even larger buff in the form of passive rewards that you can collect each day. And there's sort of like a rotation. It seems like there's a bit of an RNG component, and it seems like with a level at the top here, you can increase maybe the amount of rewards or the rarity of rewards that are available. So that's in essence the idea. You can also see here that there are one-time rewards that you can claim. Again, just like the Shield Archive, where you get those one-time rewards, whether they're permanent buffs to Instinct or whether they are, like a book selector, a speed book, Norn Stones of Chaos, whatever. But obviously these rewards seem much, much better, and so people are reasonably, concerned that this is going to be much harder to complete, or it's going to be altogether paywall. And the reason for them wondering whether it's going to be altogether paywall is because this new content is packaged in this purchasable plus pack, where you unlock Franklin, you get a couple of crystals, you unlock a hidden story pack, and it costs $40. So yeah, rightfully so, people are concerned. So my first take is, if the only way to farm this new resource, if the only way to farm emblems is by buying the pack, then yes, this is garbage. Like just flat out garbage. There should not be, that just should not exist in the game, right? There should never be a resource that you exclusively farm with money, or even with like a one-time purchase, right? Now you could say, oh well, but the deluxe packs, Alex, you could buy the deluxe packs with money. Yes, but you can also buy them with crystals. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is they don't provide exclusive rewards aside from the biometrics for that one character. So if you're telling me, right, on the other hand, if you're saying no, you can farm the emblems in a bunch of other content, but the only place to get Franklin is here, then I would say, okay, that's a different story, right? That sounds a lot more like the deluxe pack Epic Quest character. Am I happy about it that they're introducing like a new way of releasing Epic Quest characters? Not exactly. I think, people's appetite as the game gets older, people's appetite for different ways to spend money sort of declines, and players get more skeptical on average. They get more cynical on average, and they just think, man, like this is just a new thing that I have to learn, a new thing that I have to understand. I have to go watch a video to figure out if this is worth it or not. It's just a big hassle. Whereas if it's crystals, you don't have to worry so much about it because the Stark Stash provides so much value. Even if it takes you a few months of saving up, it's only like $5–10. That's like a few coffees. It's really not a big deal to the vast majority of player base, even the light spenders, right? It's really only an issue for people who can't spend any money or like teenagers, right? So there's a complete the dynamic changes completely if you can buy it with crystals versus if it's cash only. So I strongly urge the devs to reconsider offering this for money only. Again, we don't know if it's money only. It seems like it's money only right now, but it may also be available for crystals, or you may be able to buy everything but Franklin for crystals. Maybe you don't get Franklin, you don't get the crystals, and you get everything else, and it's like whatever 4,000 crystals, something like that. I don't know, but yeah, I would kind of urge them to be careful about that. The second thing I want to talk about is the emblems as content. So you can see here that the emblems have effects. So this applies to all allies, and it increases instinct attack by 4%. Doesn't seem like a super powerful effect. Some of them are a little bit more powerful, but they're still sort of restrictive. You can see here it applies to timeline battle, and it increases HP. So you're looking at these emblems, and you're at first thinking, oh man, these are just like comic cards. I'm gonna there's so many of them. There's 52 emblems or 50 emblems. This is crazy. They're not nearly as powerful as comic cards, right? Whereas a comic card applies to all allies in all content that you see fit, right? Because you can change it, and it applies 6 or 7 different buffs. That 6 buffs before it's crafted, right? Before the card is crafted, and then if you craft it, it's 12 buffs, right? This only provides 1 buff, and it's a much smaller percentage, and it only applies to 1 piece of content, right? So again, the power creep here for a lot of these emblems, I can't obviously speak to all of the emblems, but the power creep here doesn't seem too insane emblem to emblem. Obviously, if you take the totality of the emblems, if you take an account that has no emblems and an account that has maxed out emblems, yeah, there's probably going to be a pretty noticeable difference. But I would still argue, at least from what I've seen, I would still argue that comic cards are bigger, or like a bigger power creep, in the sense of like an account that has 0 cards built up, an account that has maxed out Pierce 25% crafted cards. There's a huge gap between those two accounts. So if you got through the comic card thing, if you're getting through the comic card thing, just know that this is probably not as not as huge of a gap. Now, that doesn't mean that it's going to take less time to max these out than it does to max out your cards. We've seen the devs be increasingly generous with cards because it's an older system, just like they are increasingly generous with CTPs because it's an older system, but they're not as generous with newer systems that they've introduced, like swords and like artifacts, right? They don't give them away. They basically don't give swords away at all, except for bingo. And then for artifacts, they do give away an artifact every month with the personal vault, but we've seen them be exceedingly stingy on which artifacts they choose, right? When the artifact system first came out, they gave away Spider-Man's artifact for free in the collectors, in the personal vault. They gave away Hulk's. It was like, wow. And now they're doing like Caecilius. They're just picking the shittiest possible character from every update that got a new artifact, or they're doing reruns, right? Like they're going to give out Thor's artifact in the personal vault soon, and that's kind of dumb. It's a rerun because I know they gave away Jane Foster's when it was the Thor Love and Thunder movie, but Thor's artifact is also in the legendary battle, so they're basically devaluing and kind of pseudo-cannibalizing their other content because they're being so stingy with the personal vault. And actually, if they're watching this right now, I encourage them to change the personal vault and not make it Thor, because again, it cannibalizes the legendary battle. You're literally taking sales away from yourself that you would have otherwise been able to make from people buying the Thor Love and Thunder legendary battle to get his 4-star artifact plus the other rewards. So yeah, that being said, like it's kind of a difficult conversation, but I do believe that this is content. I don't believe that this is everyone's definition of content, and I don't believe that everyone, all the players enjoy this kind of content. But this is just like all of the other things that I've referenced throughout this video. This is just like comic cards, CTPs, artifacts, swords, shield archive. It's another collection sort of thing that you do long term, right? And this is basically to give players something to grind if they are done or unsatisfied with the other grinds that the game has to offer. And I understand that that's not everybody's cup of tea. I understand that some people think you should only be grinding for characters, but that's just how it is, right? These things, it's easier to make a system like this and introduce it to the game and create a long-term viable grind that could be a year, 2 years, 3 years. It's easier to do that than saying, okay, we're just going to keep releasing characters, because eventually releasing characters does become a bit monotonous and a bit boring. It does become a bit repetitive. There's just no way to escape the possible overlap between characters. And I'm saying this in a game where we already have 200 and almost 270 characters, right? 267 or whatever right now. We already have a lot of characters. There's only about 500 characters known in the Marvel universe, more or less, besides going to like the super obscure or the ones, frankly, that don't have any powers, like Aunt May, Ben Parker. And so you just get to a point where releasing characters is not going to cut it. Now, you can say, okay, they can just release content. Yes, they can release content in the form of bosses, in the forms of like other kinds of things that you can do. But this also provides an avenue for player retention, because eventually players get to a point where their roster is satisfactory, or they sort of plateau and they say, you know what, I have all the characters that I want, but they don't want to stop playing the game. So then they start looking, okay, how do I make my character stronger? Okay, I have to get better cards. I have to get better CTPs. And so making the character stronger in order for them to tackle content more easily becomes sort of the goal of the game, and becomes the inherent grind. And I'll give you an example of a completely different game. And I'm not saying that Marvel Future Fight is the same as Elden Ring in terms of like value, scope, you know, pedigree, whatever, polish, AAA. I'm not saying any of that stuff. Don't get it twisted here. Elden Ring is my goat. All right, MFF is my side hoe. But think about it this way. In Elden Ring, at first, you're just concerned about leveling up. You're just concerned about getting more souls, or getting more whatever it's called, so that you can sorry, I haven't played the game in a while. So that you can level up, right? So you're killing mobs, you're killing enemies, you're killing bosses. You're getting a lot of the XP resource, and then you're leveling up, right? You're going to the fire, and you're leveling up, the bonfire or whatever, and you're leveling up. That's what your concern is early on. Once you hit a level that you're comfortable with, you have enough vigor, you know, you don't feel like you're getting one-shotted by bosses anymore, you start to think about your character differently, and you start thinking, okay, hang on, I need to farm for specific gear. I really want this boss weapon. I really want that armor set, because it's a Fashion Souls game. That armor set that particular enemy has. So I'm gonna keep resetting this zone, farming that one Carrion Knight, so I can get his Carrion Knight armor set. Oh, he dropped the helmet, awesome. I keep farming. 20 minutes later, oh, he dropped the chest piece, great. An hour later, finally, he dropped the boots, jeez, you know, and so on and so forth. So you can see that evolution in something as complex and whatever as Elden Ring. And it's essentially the same thing in a game like Marvel Future Fight. So to say that we don't need systems like this, and that we just need content like World Boss and whatever, it kind of just, it's missing a crucial piece of information. In my opinion, it's missing a bit of understanding about what makes games enjoyable, right? Because you want to always have like a next step. You want to always have something to strive for, something to grind for, and that's what this is. Now, I'm not defending this system as being good inherently. I'm just saying that these sorts of systems are necessary, and that's why you see them pop up about once a year. It's pretty much like once a year. Like this year we have this. Last year we had swords, or roughly a year ago we had swords. Roughly a year before that we had artifacts, or 2 years before that we had artifacts. You know, in between we had Shield Archive. And it basically just goes like that, right? Before a year before that, before artifacts, we had crafting cards and mighty brilliant CTPs, and you just go and you can map out, right, all of these upgrades in the game as they happen. So yeah, I do think that this is something that's essentially necessary at certain points in the game, but I'm not defending it as being a good system until we see the bones, right? We see how you obtain these emblems, if it's free-to-play friendly, how you upgrade the emblems, because that's also important if that's free-to-play friendly. The whole system needs to be interactable by free-to-play or low-spending players without requiring them to become whales, right? This cannot be a whale only, but I genuinely hope that the devs have good intentions and that while they want to make money on this system, they understand that it's always a balance that they have to strike with this game. And if I look back at the last two systems that they introduced, you know, the two big systems, which is artifacts and swords, both of those were free-to-play friendly because they said, you know what, you can gamble for artifacts, sure, or you can go grind essence in a free-to-play accessible game mode, Dimension Rifts, and you can use that essence to gamble to get artifacts. And then with swords, they said, sure, you can buy the packs for swords if you want, if you're a whale, or you can grind Otherworld Battle. There's an Otherworld Battle shop. There's tier 4 materials, right? And you can slowly build up your swords completely for free without having to open your wallet, spend any real money. So I'm confident that they realize this is the way to get people to, you know, buy in to new content like this, and that they're going to avoid a boycott, that they're going to avoid any of the garbage that, you know, has happened in the past with things, you know, with more predatory things like how P cards originally were crafted, where you needed another P card, which means you needed 30 premium cards to craft one premium card, which means you need 150 premium cards to craft your set. That's the original, you know, that was the original setup, and that was insane. So yeah, hopefully we avoid something like that. But yeah, that being said, I don't think, on the other hand, that this is exactly content. And I do think there are some players that are frustrated that we're not actually getting content because they referred to this. This was what they referred to in the dev note as dynamic content. And I think they think it's dynamic because there is, you know, they force you to play with designated characters, and because there's chapters that unlock over time, or you can skip it if you pay money, and because some of the battles in the chapter are sort of like alternative stories. So I guess they think it's dynamic in that way because you have one story here, and then you have the pink one where if you buy the bonus pack and you spend money or whatever, you get sort of like an alternate telling of the same story, or an alternate ending to the same story. That is not really dynamic. That's just binary, right? That means that there's one option and then there's another option. So there's two options. That's literally binary. That's not dynamic. So we'll have to wait and see what other surprises are in store for this kind of content. I think Multiverse Saga could be good. I think it could be great. It really just depends on decisions that they make as far as, like, you know, how grindable it is, what are the rewards like, how free-to-play friendly is it, and how dynamic is it actually, right? Do the required characters change often enough? Is it like monthly, like the story mode? Is it daily, like ABX, ABL? If the characters don't change and you just use the same characters every time and you get the same rewards every time, then that's 100% static, and that's just like Legendary Battle, and that's going to be a snooze fest, and players are going to get bored of that in a week or two. So yeah, it's really a question mark. It's really up in the air right now, but I do want to see more before I come to my final conclusion. Obviously, before I give my final opinion, I do want to see more. It could be good, but I do understand players on both sides who are, you know, justifiably skeptical, and hopefully this has sort of expanded the conversation so that we can give the game a fair shot at introducing something new, but also holding them accountable to make something that is going to be for everyone, accessible by everyone, and is going to be, you know, interesting and entertaining, at least from a collector's point of view. So yeah, hit me up in the comments down below. Let me know what you think. Let me know what your take on the conversation is. Thank you so much for watching. Smash the like button if you enjoyed the content, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.